You call Reputation tonally consistent.
Oh, no, don't do this.
I know this is going to hurt you, but we're doing this to each other. Reputation is my number 7 album.
How long have I known you?
Long
How long
time.
have I known you?
Yeah, long time.
Have you ever learned anything from me in the years? No, seriously. Because if you learned one thing, it's that Reputation is not the 7th best Taylor Swift album. I don't know how I'm going to make it through the rest of the show. Hello and welcome to Popcast Deluxe, your long were the nights when my days once revolved around you. Of weekly cultural review, I'm Jon Caramanica, a critic at the New York Times.
I'm Joe Coscarelli. I'm a reporter at the New York Times.
Joe, it's Big Things Coming, LLC. It's real things coming. It's raw thoughts. The rawest thoughts on Popcast Deluxe this week. Loyal viewers know very well that part of our long-standing lore, the thing that binds us and sometimes tears us asunder, is Taylor Swift and the career of Taylor Swift.
Us and the rest of the world.
And everybody who checks in on us, whether in video clip form or in full form. We both interviewed Taylor, written extensively about Taylor, literally written about Taylor since her first single. I brought something today that I was going to wear, but it's a little tight.
Because it's from
2008 or 9. This is merch from in between album 1 and album 2, I think. I got it while reporting the story that I wrote in 2009. TaylorSwift.com. Early.
Yeah, the logo on the back says TaylorSwift.com.
Early URL. Point being, Taylor Swift is an animating force in our careers. For better, I would say only infrequently for worse, but definitely for better most of the time. And so we wanted to have a particularly big episode of Deluxe this week. And one thing that we've been toying with is we really got to rank the albums. And it's like, I know you go on the internet, it's like you can't open up an app, a social media thing without seeing a ranking. And like,
these are not those rankings.
Yeah, like literally like apologies to that man. Truly. These are the rankings.
Yeah. And I think they're going to be very different.
They're going to be very different.
We don't know each other's rankings.
We have not pre-gamed this at all, except to talk about big picture, how we're going to talk about each album. But we have not looked at each other's lists. We do not know. We are going to go in ascending order from worst to best. There are some caveats.
Yes.
Do you want to tell people what the caveats are?
Sure. Well, we should have guessed each other's lists. That would have been its own episode. But based on the many conversations we've had about Taylor's albums, I think I know roughly where you stand on each one. But I'm interested in, especially upon revisiting with this task in mind, where things ended up for you. We teased this episode a little earlier in the summer. It's been something on our minds. Yeah. Obviously, Taylor Swift is on everybody's minds for the last 2, 3,
Constantly.
4, 5 years.
Yes.
Bigger than ever. And it seems like a good moment. Like Eras Tour, eventually it's going to end. We're going to exhale as a culture.
Or she's just going to drop another album.
Or she's just going to keep going. She's just going to keep going.
She's going to be like, I saw some footage of Khabib and McGregor.
Okay.
And it's just going to be like Khabib.
Yeah.
It's like,
this is going to be UFC style.
Just maybe
album releases.
Could be.
Right.
Anyway.
She's going to kick you in the back of the head in no time with a new album. Lots going on in the world. Consider this summer counter programming.
Sure.
We're here for joy, jokes, to enjoy the music. But
most of it.
We're only going to enjoy the albums as they were originally released. No bonus tracks, no re-records. This is the 11 official Taylor Swift albums. Apologies to the Target exclusive Christmas album.
A pretty good record.
Apologies to Clear Channel Stripped.
The live
album.
I had not encountered. Pretty good. Can't listen to it over the weekend. Pretty good.
This is the 11 proper Taylor Swift albums as they were originally released.
I do not want to hear about the 3 a.m. edition.
No bonus tracks.
We do not want to hear about Taylor's versions. And I don't want to do a philosophical jaunt on Taylor's versions. We've talked about it in the past. The goal in ranking is to talk about the albums as they were conceived and delivered in the moment.
Right.
And when I thought about what my scores or order was going to be, I had a bit of a process. I'll briefly talk about the process. First, I listened back to every album.
Yep, same.
And I marked, very simply, do I like this song or not like this song? And in some cases, do I half like this song? I added it up. I said, okay, it's 7 songs out of 13. That's 50 whatever percent.
It's a raw score.
Yeah. I put those in order. Then as a sort of complement to that, I said, well, obviously some songs have some duds. I mean, some albums have some duds. What if I just rank them purely by the number of great songs? I did that, slightly different order. Then you get to the weighted average.
Because some highs are so high
exactly
that they make up for the lows.
And so what I ended up with like kind of like sub-albums that were very clearly, in my estimation, the lowest and the worst, and a few that were very clearly the highs. In the middle group, I really leaned on the weighted average, the weighted GPA.
Okay.
Where if a few songs were so incredible that I could forgive the bad songs, it went up. And in some cases, if the overall affect of the album was so irritating that it kind of it worked against the best songs, that got dropped down.
Right, because this is a thing. It's like, this is a best albums ranking. This is not a best singles ranking. This is not a which has the most singles. Yeah. To me, an album is like, can you listen to it front to back? Is it coherent? Does it tell a story? Does it have a sound? Does it have an idea?
What are you, 63?
But also, are the highs high?
Did you just read that Eminem tweet out loud from the other day?
Where he said, you have to listen to my album in order, or you might not understand it.
Or Eminem will come to your house and force you to listen to it front to back.
That's how I feel about Lover. No, and I think, there are albums that I think in the world of conventional wisdom about Taylor Swift are overrated because of the highs, and there are albums that I think are underrated because of the lows, and how public, for instance, lead singles. Like, I think lead singles does a lot of work in terms of people's biases. I think
opening tracks,
the first couple tracks can mislead. And I think if you're
both directions.
Yeah, in both directions. And if you're thinking of this, to me, it's cumulative. It's overall, pound for pound, which are the albums that I would come back to, not as I'm going to skip around and listen to 5 songs that I love, but this body of work represents to us, and I think we should say it, like one of the great singer-songwriters and pop stars of
the 21st century.
Right. Yeah. And of our lifetimes.
We talked about this a little bit when we were sitting in the other room before we started recording. When it comes to pure discography, I really think the only competition, big picture, it's Taylor, it's Drake, it's Kanye, it's Beyonce. I think for the 2000s.
That's the Mount Rushmore of pop in the 21st
And it's not
century.
to say that other people haven't made great pop albums or other people didn't have high peaks, but I just can't entertain the notion that any other pop star or star in any genre was this consistently good and interesting for this long.
And productive.
Outside of those.
Yeah, I mean, like, the thing that struck me listening back to this is like, man, there's a lot of songs we forget. Like, there's some real stinkers in here. She writes hundreds of songs. Of course, some are going to stink.
Yeah.
But overall, I'm like, all these albums are good. And all of these albums have great moments. And it's like, it's a little bit shocking because you can take some of this for granted. Like, there are songs on here that are so big that I've heard so many times that are, annoyingly part of the pop culture wallpaper that you can forget A, what they were like when they came out, and B, that they're like, this is music coming from one person.
And also,
like, this is, there are co-writers, there are producers. She goes through collaborators, but at its core, we watched this artist go from a precocious teenager who wrote incredible songs to wherever we are now. And like, it's what a journey, it's not over, but like it is, when you look back on it holistically, I think it's impressive enough that sometimes we overlook it.
The last thing I'll say before we get into the actual blow for blow is I was thinking a lot about the nature of fandom. And fandom, certainly in the Stan era, has all these blinders on. Like, anything that a person does is obviously an A+, and we support it. We support the new stuff, and we support the old stuff. Listening back to all of Taylor's albums in order, I actually started to develop some sympathy for people who have gotten on and off the train over the years. Because different albums, and more to the point, different eras or sections of the catalog solve different problems.
Right.
And if you are a person who only had one of those problems at the particular time that Taylor was solving it, I can understand why you got off and why, or maybe you weren't on and then got on at a certain point. That makes way more sense to me now. I have not done this exercise outside of casual conversation. I've not sat down and listened end to end in years.
Yeah.
So it was instructive. And when I think about my engagement with Taylor, your engagement with Taylor, the willingness to see an artist as they evolve and discard parts of themselves.
Especially parts of themselves that we loved.
Yeah, and remain great even in the rear view. That's a different kind of fandom. That's a different kind of intense scrutiny is the word that comes to mind, but I don't mean it in a negative way. Like, we parse all these things in a very intense and detailed way, and we don't parse it looking for cracks or flaws. We parse it because we believe the art in and of itself is meritorious.
It reminds me of Survivor. We'll rank Survivor someday.
Speaking of meritorious art, I would love to know what your least favorite Taylor Swift album is.
So I went into this thinking I knew what it was because I've said it on some Taylor pods that we've done in the past. And when I went back to this album, I think this goes across the board. Better than I remember. Almost entirely this discography better than I remember.
It's funny. I had a very different experience, but okay.
But still my least favorite Taylor Swift album, number 11, Midnights.
Yeah.
2022.
Yeah.
Midnights is, to me, it's the most filler of the albums.
Yeah.
It's not a new sound. It's not a new idea. It's a happy relationship album, but towards the end of that happy it's like none of these songs really stick with me. The best thing that happened out of this album was Antihero. I didn't think she would have a sort of world-beating smash radio single again, like after the last couple of years, Cruel Summer notwithstanding, which sort of obviously had a late in life run. It's just, this album just doesn't do a lot for me. The songs I like are the throwbacky songs. I like You're on Your Own, Kid. Yes. I like Sweet Nothings. I have a soft spot for Bejeweled and Karma. Like, I think the sillier songs work for me going back in retrospect.
Yep.
But the sort of like moody, sexy pop Taylor, the Lavender Haze, Midnight Rain, like Maroon, like it's just not my thing. It's just not my version of her. I don't like the palette.
Yeah. I hate the vocal effects on this album.
Yeah, it's too much.
And I mean, obviously, we will talk about Folklore and Evermore, which this album immediately follows.
Right.
And when I was listening back to this album after listening to Folklore and Evermore, I understand the choice of why did you do this?
Sure.
You did it as like a hard reset and also re-engagement with pop.
Sure.
But we'll get to more of that.
Yeah. So yeah, Midnights to me, it just doesn't work as a whole. I'd never return to it. I'm happy to hear some of the songs in passing or in the tour set list or whatever, but it's just it's the lightest. It's the most disposable. It's slight to me. What's your number 11?
It is not Midnights.
Okay.
The worst Taylor Swift album. And frankly, in re-listening to all these albums, the worst Taylor Swift album by a rather large margin is Evermore.
I had a feeling you were going there.
Okay, so close listeners of Popcast know my ongoing wrestling match with the Folklore Evermore era. So when I went back to listen, I tried to listen with really open ears because I know how you feel about this record. I know how a lot of people who I respect feel about these records, rather. And one of the things being essential, a crucial thing for criticism is being open to not being bound by your own biases, coming to something cold. One of the exercises here is not simply what did I think of this album when it came out, but it's also how did it hold up? What part of the story does it tell? Evermore, to me, fails on a few levels. it feels like the lesser version of the folklore evermore dyad. And I think there was a moment where I said evermore was better, maybe on some like pugnacious type energy.
Sure.
But I don't actually think it's better. I think the songwriting it's fine on paper, but it's every production tick that got under my skin on folklore done worse and less effectively. It really does feel like the B-sides of folklore, which, sort of, but it does feel like the afterthoughts. It feels like the 3 a.m. version. It's the stuff that they just should have just dumped out a day or two later, but for whatever reason decided to drag it out. I found this album actively hard to listen to. And I don't think it shows off Taylor's best singing. I don't think it shows off her best songwriting's fine, but it's not her best songwriting. And I think the production it's the least effective for her voice. She makes a lot of strange production choices over the years that we'll get to, but for her particular voice, all this stuff does is suffocate her.
I'm going to save my defense, not only of Evermore, but also obviously of folklore.
Of course.
We're going to get there.
Of course.
You said your piece.
Thanks. Now that we have gotten most of the toxicity out of the way.
It's just the beginning.
Joe, what is the second worst Taylor Swift album?
The 10th best Taylor Swift album.
Second worst Taylor Swift album.
Again, sort of surprising no one. I'm getting my biases out of the way early.
Yeah.
Tortured Poets Department. That's this year's album.
This is going to make for a fascinating conversation.
You're coming around on this album.
Talk to me about the Tortured Poets Department.
Better than I thought it was.
Agree.
We've already revisited this album that came out either 100 years ago or like 4 months ago, depending on how your brain works. It feels like a million years ago that this album came out. I think we know the fact that it came out with the anthology skewed a lot of people's perception, I think, of this record. It was too much all at once.
Way too much. Especially
at this moment. But when you boil down to Tortured Poets itself, I'm arguing for it, but it's still not as good as the ones to come to me. It has a point of view. I just don't know that I love that point of view.
I think I understand this album's point of view way more now than I did in the moment.
Sure.
But when we arrive at my placement, we'll talk more about
that. There's still stuff I like on here. I really like But Daddy, I Love Him.
Running with my dress unbuttoned, screaming, but Daddy, I love him. I'm having his baby. No, I'm not, but you should see your faces. I'm telling him to floor it through the fences. No, I'm not coming to my senses. I know he's crazy, but he's the one I want.
That's an all-time Taylor song. Guilty as Sin, Smallest Man in the World. Like, some of this stuff really earned its keep.
A lot of tart lyrics on this album.
Yes, but too many lyrics. It still comes down to the writing to me.
I heard on Popcast Deluxe that she's being intentionally cringe.
I think the unwieldiness is a choice. It's just not my favorite version of her. I think Taylor Swift works so well within the parameters of pop songwriting, and she's done it so well for so often that she now feels entitled, I think, to break the rules.
Yeah,
and I don't begrudge her that. I just don't like listening to it as much.
I'm going to save my thoughts on Tortured Poets Department for a little bit later. On a basic level, that album doesn't bring me a lot of joy.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've come to admire it a little bit more, but it doesn't bring me a lot of joy. And I think when I was doing like the final alignment, joy, enthusiasm, rapture, that stuff mattered more. And that, even if the percentages were this way, maybe they got moved this way.
I totally agree. I think like best is different than favorite
Yes.
And maybe
are we doing best?
Maybe we're gonna call this best.
I think it's best
because it's definitive.
It's definitive.
It's definitive, at least for us. But to me, this is an artist where, again, we've invested so much time and emotional energy, both personally and professionally, that like I can't help but come at this from a fan's perspective a little bit. So it's not so I can't sort of totally remove myself and say like, which album is crafted the best? It's like, which album makes me feel the most? You know, like when do I get goosebumps? When do I laugh? When do I cry? You know, like I couldn't take that out of these rankings. So like Tortured Poets might be higher if I was trying to be a little bit more objective, but it's just not my Taylor Swift.
Again, I'm going to save it.
What do you have at number 10?
I mean, this won't surprise you, but number 10 for me is Midnights.
Okay.
Look, apart from my number 11, I don't have any Taylor Swift albums that are genuinely unpleasant to me. Midnights is inscrutable to me in the way that you're describing the choices on Tortured Poets Department, just not speaking to you.
Sure.
The choices on Midnights, I think beyond not speaking to me, feel inconsistent with the best Taylor Swift decision making over the years. There's a few good songs. Vigilante shit. Really, really like Vigilante shit.
That's so low. Well, this is like, we always come back to this. You like a certain version of Taylor that is like drama with a capital
Sassed.
D.
I like sass.
Yeah, see, I don't. I like earnestness. I like
that too.
Storytelling. I like fairy
New Year's
tales.
Day. You know, like
I'm not talking about New Year's Day.
The most earnest song ever. What are you talking? All right, madness.
But you like the Broadway Taylor.
Yes, a little bit.
Do not
Shake It Off, which we'll get to.
Right, but that's not Broadway Taylor to me. That's Kids Bop Taylor. That's not like.
The final.
You like Tolerate It? We'll get to this, but you like Tolerate It?
All right, and you mentioned when you were talking about it, the Bejeweled and Karma duet.
The camp Taylor.
Yes, I still can't get behind Karma.
Okay.
I just refuse. I don't accept it.
Even with Ice Spice?
Like emphatically
Especially with
Ice Spice. I mean, no Ice Spice slander generally tolerated on Popcast Deluxe, but that is a stratagem of epic proportions that does not land right.
Okay.
Talk about running mate selections. Bejeweled, though?
You like Bejeweled.
I have found a path to Bejeweled.
Yeah.
I have found my way. But this album, especially coming on the heels of Folklore Evermore, it almost feels overcompensatory. It's like, how can I make something that sounds poppy and mystical and magical and sparkling and humorous and lighthearted and everything that those other two albums are not? How do I absolutely pendulum swing to the other end? And it feels intentional. And obviously all Taylor Swift choices are intentional, but it feels so heavy-handed intentional. They don't feel like songs that poured out of a person. They feel like decisions that were made and then songs that were backfilled into those decisions. I don't enjoy listening to this record.
Album of the year, Midnights.
Joe, what's number 9?
All right, here's where I start to lose people.
I can't
My
wait.
third least favorite Taylor Swift album of all time is 1989.
Honestly, I'm with you.
Is it also your number 9?
It's not my number 9, but it's I know where you're going.
Okay.
I know where you're going.
Again, objectively.
Not only do I know it, but I respect it.
So if you're keeping track.
Because I was worried I was going to have to be the one to do what you're about to do.
Right.
But now you have to do it, which is great.
If you're keeping track, I do rank Evermore over 1989. Which, like,
sicko behavior.
This is my heart and soul.
Sicko behavior.
I never got anything out of 1989. I was disappointed from the moment she debuted Shake It Off on the Ellen DeGeneres show. Blank Space is a great single. Style has its moments.
Great song.
You know what the best song on 1989 is?
All you had to do was stay?
Oh, awful. No. No. No.
Okay, no, tell me.
It's Clean, co-written by Imogen Heap.
Pouring down when I was drowning, that's when I could finally breathe. And by morning, gone was any trace of you. I think I am finally clear.
Oh, come on.
I love
Wilding.
Clean.
Who hurt you?
And to me,
Who hurt you?
it's everything wrong with the album, with every song before that, is that none of them sound like Clean.
Unbelievable.
I get it. It brought us the Taylor that we know today. It was necessary. I just don't like listening to it. It's too broad. It's too silly.
Yeah.
It's just not why I showed up to the party.
My sort of like macro note on it is first adult album. And to that point, it is a transition album. I know what you mean. You're saying it's the last childhood album.
No, I'm saying that Red is the first adult album.
That is not correct. To me, I'll say what I have to say, but like on a fundamental level, I was shocked at how poorly this album did by all the metrics that I was like mapping out.
It doesn't stand up.
I thought it was going to be number 3,
right?
Like from a distance,
right?
I was like, oh, that's like up. And then when you actually get into it, there's a lot of weak points.
I actually think this might be the true dichotomy between Taylor Swift fans. It's, are you a 1989 person or are you not? And I think if I know that you are a 1989 person, I know the version of Taylor that speaks to you. And if you are a skeptic of the big pop crossover, Max Martin moment, I also think it's the seed of a lot of what I don't like about Taylor post 1980.
Yeah, sure.
It's, if you listen to Out of the Woods, her first big collaboration with Jack Antonoff, they'd worked together before. Going back over this discography, I will say a lot of the best Taylor Swift ideas are Taylor Swift and Jack Antonoff ideas, but there are ones that have never worked for me, and it's, you hear it to me in the verses of Out of the Woods. It's the same thing I've complained about on Midnights and Tortured Poets Department. It's the run-on flow. It's the, you know, I'm no longer going to rhyme as much as I used to. I'm not going to edit tightly. I'm going to color outside of the lines a bit, both sonically and especially melodically and lyrically. And to me, that's where she loses the plot a little bit as a songwriter. And it's just not my favorite version of her. It's what she put the guitar down, and I missed the guitar.
It's funny, like when I was taking notes on all the albums, I mostly was just writing down the songs I liked or the songs I half liked. But on each album, I just had to like, do I hate anything on this album? I hate Out of the Woods. I get it.
I get it.
Understand.
It's fun live. I've had moments with it in concert.
I understand its function. I do not enjoy listening to it. But I'm really, really glad that you like ripped that Band-Aid off, because I would say out of any album, there are 2 albums that I was shocked I did not feel as warmly about as I would have, as my memories would have led me to believe. This was one of those 2 albums.
My 1989 highlight, other than Clean, which has always been one of my favorites, that I think is a song that I think has aged really well, that I didn't buy the first time, and it has a horrible music video. We don't have to talk about how bad so many of these music videos are, but Wildest Dreams.
Yeah.
Great song. To me, that's like, that's mature Taylor. And I think we've seen, in the same way we've seen it go left with songs like Out of the Woods, I think we've seen her sort of perfect Wildest Dreams in a lot of ways. What do you have at number 9?
Well, Joe, it will not surprise you to learn the 3rd worst Taylor Swift album of all time, the 9th best. Say it with me. It's Folklore.
I knew it.
It was almost 8.
Okay.
Let's talk about Folklore. I almost texted you yesterday to just say, what if I told you Folklore was a good album? Everybody's watching like, of course Folklore's a good album.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Also album of the year.
Not for me. Folklore is an album that, to me, I mean, forget Evermore, but like to me, does not play really. only intermittently plays to Taylor Swift's strengths. And I understand the constraints, the pandemic, not on the road, able to make a record, not considering how it might appear in a stadium show, then having to make a whole bizarre set to kind of accommodate Folklore and Evermore. Like, I understand it comes from a different, like, sliding doors timeline that maybe is not where Taylor was intending to go. The work with Aaron Dessner from The National on this and Evermore, like, genuinely one of my least favorite working popular musicians. I don't know if we rank albums, we rank songs, but if we ranked textures, it would be my least enjoyed.
Gauzy is your least favorite texture.
Folklore, when I went back to it with generous ears, has, to my appreciation, a fair amount of really good songs. Mirror Ball.
Incredible. The
Betty.
culmination.
Yeah.
Both of those, Betty and Mirrorball, to me, the culmination of a Taylor thing.
Exile. I like Exile.
See, you like Broadway.
What are you saying about Justin Vernon?
You
How dare
love
you put
theater.
Justin Vernon?
Look,
bro?
we share an affection for Bon Iver, but you like theater.
This is no, I'm not sorry. The Last Great American Dynasty, which is a bonkers song,
Crazy song,
and actually better than I remember.
Really works.
And they said, there goes the last great American dynasty. Who knows if she never showed up, what could have been? There goes the most shameless woman this town has ever seen. She had a marvelous time ruining everything.
She
When
lands
I'm looking at this list of songs that I like, I don't have written down here all the songs that absolutely just like fade into mist. And the vast majority of this album, for me, fades into mist.
Interesting that you use the term "fade into you." It's like Mazzy Star. There's some Mazzy Star in
There
here,
is.
like, and that's like the dream pop Taylor
But Hope
is
Sandoval
like
meant that shit. She
like
meant it.
I'll save my
Yep.
my folklore because spoiler, it's going to be high on my list.
Yeah.
But I feel you. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But I'm glad you've at least come around to some of the highs, because I do feel like you don't do this often because you're a critic and you mean business, but like you really dug your heels in against this one. In part because people love it so much.
But also, it's still number 9.
Sure.
It's still like on the pure score.
But this is the most positive I've ever heard you say about it.
7 songs out of 16, I think, are okay. 7 out of 16, it's less than half. There's only 4 albums total that are less than half. And it's my bottom 3 and one that I gave like a bit of a boost.
Yeah.
To me, there's so many songs on this album. If this was a 10-song album that had my 7 favorite songs and 3 others, this might be the 5th best Taylor Swift record. I've really allowed...
So you're not totally opposed to the idea.
No, I've allowed it to seep into my consciousness. I've accepted it as a modality of how she works.
Yes.
But I really think if we are lining up like the Broadway stuff, the sassy stuff, the kind of boss stuff, the kind of sensitive, heartrending stuff, and then whatever this is, like space hippie, whatever that is, it's the least effective thing. It's when we always talked over the years about Taylor needs to make a Joni Mitchell record, yada yada. This is not what I meant.
Disagree. It's what I meant.
This is literally not what I meant. This is like if you made a Joni Mitchell record, but then played it back on like something from the Library of Congress on like a piano roll or something.
Joni got crazy. Joni got crazy on some of those albums.
I'm just saying on a
You ever heard her reggae song?
I choose to not know what that is. I have to make certain protection choices. It's a wrong, to me, it's the wrong way to approach that. And like one thing that I kept coming back to over and over again is by this time in Taylor's career, her voice is actually strong.
Which it's really not on the early albums.
No, it's like,
but I find it so charming how thin the voice is on some of the like belting power ballads of the first half of the career. And I'm like, oh man, it just worked. Like she sells it so much because she's a songwriter.
But I have a whole thing about uncredited male backup singers.
It's in my notes too.
Yeah.
There's so much male backup singing.
Crazy on the first 3 albums.
Yeah.
Crazy. All right, we'll get
especially
to it.
the first one.
Oh my God, it's unreal.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Okay, so to me, her voice at this stage of her career is strong enough that she could do straight like guitar and microphone without all this extra mess. It's only harming her.
It's much more the production than the songwriting that you seem to be taking issue with.
Yeah, I'm way more sympathetic to the songwriting now than I was before, but the production still, I think,
sinks it
absolutely wrong.
My number 8, it's Evermore.
3 too high.
I really like half of Evermore. I really, 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 really like it. And it's because...
Like, listen for pleasure, like...
Yes. You know I have a playlist that combines the best from folklore and the best from Evermore. I obviously agree that they're of a piece. They're obviously of a piece. But I don't think of them so much as bonus tracks or extras or outtakes or whatever. I just think she was really living in this mode, and she had more to say in this mode.
In her bag.
And I like this mode. And
except it was a leather satchel.
It was a satchel,
in which potions were contained.
Yes.
Okay.
'Tis the Damn Season. No. Ivy. Marjorie. Gold Rush. Like, there's a lot of songs on here that I think do something that she had never achieved before, and I don't know when she'll return to. I like the experimentation, and I love the lyrics. I like the sort of remove from this is the album even more than folklore. That feels like a character study.
Yeah.
It's like I don't think about her and her tabloid self, her celebrity self, when I'm listening to this album almost at all, which is very rare. And it's okay. Like, I'm fine with that meta relationship with Taylor where you're constantly thinking about who is this song about, or what was going on in her life at this time, or what is this an allusion to? But the sort of Easter eggification of Taylor that has really picked up since these albums, particularly in the re-record era, like, this is a reprieve from that. And it really feels singular in her catalog, even more so than folklore, which I like more and will be on my list later. But Evermore, it just works for me. There's some lows. I don't like Tolerated, as I mentioned. One of my least favorite parts of the show, of the Era's film, with the table scene and whatever. Like, I don't like No Body, No Crime as much as I like the idea of doing a murder song.
Right. Can you imagine a great song of that duet style, like in a different production style? Right.
But even Florida, which we didn't talk about on Tortured Poets. Like, the one thing that sticks out to me in re-listening to this, and we talked about this a little bit off mic, is like Taylor's duets. When people guest on her albums, it is often not great.
Well, okay.
That said, I love Coney Island.
Sorry for not winning you an arcade ring. Over and over. Lost again with no surprises. Disappointments, close your eyes and it gets colder and colder. When the sun goes down.
Come on, man.
I love Coney Island.
Come on.
She works with Matt Berenger from The National even more, I think, than she works with Justin Vernon of Bon Iver. Something about their styles complement one another, and as much as I want to feel like this is a corny song, gets me every time.
No, it's a corny song.
It's not Everything Has Changed or some of the other duets that we'll get to.
Well, should we just
Taylor
do
albums.
the duet jaunt now? Because it's not like it's worth talking about.
Gary Lightbody?
Bro. That was a freebie. You know, like sometimes in your career, like you stumble into something and like you just got to take it for a W.
Yeah.
That was your W, just FYI.
Yeah.
Okay. One thing we talk about a lot in hip hop, especially, is you can tell how much the guest admires the host by how strong of a verse they deliver.
You're talking about the Snow Patrol guy still.
The point being that there is a way to think about it's not simply the union of two people, but a particular thing about the symbiosis. What is the guest bringing to the house?
Yeah.
The one thing about all Taylor Swift duets, and I will extend this to people who come out during the shows for like guests, you know, like Fetty Wap coming out. Look it up. It happened. It's Taylor's house.
Yeah.
It's not your house.
Yeah.
You don't even get to stay.
Take your shoes off, dude, from Snow Patrol.
Literally, like you don't even get to stay in the extra bedroom on the same floor that Taylor's on. Like
you're in the guest house.
You're in the guest.
Glassberg.
Yeah, like literally, like in the.
Sorry.
I'm just gonna let that.
Moving
We're just gonna
on.
let that fly.
Yeah.
You are in the guest house. You're in the basement. You have a separate drive to get there.
Where's Future staying?
Future
Ubered to the house.
Yeah, he doesn't spend the night. Future doesn't spend the night.
And it waited outside.
Yeah. Taylor has been uniquely inhospitable to duet partners on record and on stage. And I think historically has chosen to duet with people who are by and large less famous than she is. Very rarely do you see the inverse of Taylor. I mean, there's not that many people but even early in her career, there's not that much of it. So really, every time you see someone
she guessed on that John Mayer album.
Every time you see Taylor duetting with someone on any of these records, what I immediately know, I mean, obviously I've listened to it a bunch, but what I immediately know is that those people showed up and did what they were told. And what they were told is, don't show up the host. This is a ongoing, dare I say, it's a Taylor problem. It's not simply a Taylor curiosity. It's a Taylor problem. There is no, you think about like the great other stars of this generation. You think about a Beyonce, you think about a Drake. It's like their mutability is part of what makes them so interesting. Taylor is not terribly mutable. And even on songs where she's trying to work outside of her style, her awkwardness is actually the thing that sets the tone. She doesn't effortlessly move into that style.
I'm thinking about Gasoline when she jumped on the Haim song. It's like pretty weird.
Yeah.
It's rough. You know where I will say it works? I know we're not really doing bonus tracks, but the Phoebe Bridgers duet.
I'm even a little bit out on that, but I know what you mean. It's close.
Yeah, and at least they're playing on, in the song, they're playing on the dynamic between the two.
Yeah.
Nothing New, I think it's called.
Yeah.
What do you got at number 8?
My number 8 is an album that when it came out, I thought there was a chance it would be my least favorite Taylor Swift album of all time.
Okay.
So that'll tell you it's pre-folklore. It's Lover.
Mm-hmm.
This to me, okay, so we talked about Midnights. Midnights is a worse album, but it's consistent. It's consistently bad.
Lover is all over the place.
Midnights takes one or two ideas about Taylor and just beats them mercilessly, and they're just the wrong ideas. Lover has like 5 or 6 bad ideas. It's actually quite striking. Just when you're sort of like, oh no, please don't do this, something else arrives. And you're like, oh no, I can't believe you chose to do that after you're doing this. My macro note is cheeky and light, but many really annoying songs.
I mean, Lover crept up my list. Lover was the one where, like you said, when it came out, maybe you thought it was your least favorite. To me, it was going into this project, I was like, man, Lover is a dud. Like, I only listened to a couple songs from it over the years. When I listened to it again, I was like, kind of like this album.
Okay, so I like You Need to Calm Down.
Okay.
I like that. I like Cornelia Street.
Yeah.
Really good. I like The Man, which I know is extravagantly cheesy, but I think she pulls it off. And I think, like, here's the thing. What Taylor did on The Man is what Katy Perry thinks she was doing on this single.
Of course.
This new single.
It's so weird to try the same
Why
thing
would you do
way
it?
later,
Literally
5
exists.
years later.
Literally exists. And The Man was already like 15 years late. What wave of feminism are we on? Come on. It's like, anyway.
In spite of itself. I agree. It works.
I Think He Knows. Like, there's a number of things I think carry over some of the, dare I say, groove ideas from the album that immediately precedes this.
Yeah.
And I'm happy about that.
It is more similar to Reputation than...
The parts of it that are an extension of Reputation, primo. Now, that said, Miss Americana and the Heartbreak Kid. London Boy.
London Boy, we can agree on.
You know I love a London boy. I enjoy nights in Brixton, Shoreditch in the afternoon. He likes my American smile like a child when our eyes meet. Darling, I fancy you. Take me back to Highgate, met our love is best mates. So I guess all the rumors are true. You know I love a London boy. Boy, I fancy you.
I actually would have, if you would have put a gun to my head and said, "Does John like London Boy?" I would have cried a single tear and I would have said yes.
Me. Lover is not, it's not a failure of songwriting necessarily. It is a car crash of inconsistent ideas. There are, this is, I don't know if anybody is A&Ring Taylor in this era. Of course,
Probably
if
not.
ever.
Yeah.
But like, this is the definition of like someone should be in the room. And I think, especially coming on the back of Reputation, which to me is like a pretty tonally consistent record, this is chaotic to me.
Okay. You call Reputation tonally consistent?
Oh, no, don't do that.
That's insane. It's insane. Reputation is my number 7 album.
Dog.
Reputation,
How long have I known you?
long
long
time.
have I known you?
Yeah, long time.
How have you ever learned anything from me in the years? No, seriously. Like, I've known you 15 years?
Sure.
No, more.
Yeah, yeah.
Before I came here?
15-ish.
15-ish. In 15 years of knowing me, you've never learned a single thing from me. Is that true?
The Reputation, you
Never,
you
not
like,
one thing.
You think you wrote Reputation?
No, I'm just saying you never learned one thing. Because if you learned one thing, it's that Reputation's not the 7th best Taylor Swift album. I don't know how I'm going to make it through the rest of the show.
I like it. Hey, Marty, Kundun, I liked it.
Just
you
gonna
know?
fucking support. Are you ready to do the rest of the show with water poured over your head?
It's a mess.
Oh, man.
It's a mess.
Oh, dog.
It's a mess. People think Reputation and
I'm
they
just going
think
to play Wordle real quick. Like, you say whatever the hell you want to say. I'm just gonna...
they think it's 808s and rap flow and the snake and the hood, you know, they think it's villain era, which like fine it is, and that stuff is quite embarrassing sometimes.
Yeah.
The Ready For It is like it's so ridiculous.
Doom, 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 doom. Wah, 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 wah.
It's the you know how she clears her voice before she sings for the first time on this album? It's like it's a crazy thing to do. You know that there's a future verse very early on in this album, followed not long after by a rap verse by Ed Sheeran where he mentions the 4th of July. It's a British man.
Lives in Brooklyn Heights.
The flows are just off. And then, okay, but here's the thing. That's what people think Reputation is. And then there's all the rest of it. And it's not like that at all. Then there's, you know, oh man, I just like King of My Heart, you know, Call It What You Want, Gorgeous. Like, what are these songs? Like,
King of My Heart is bad. I will absolutely grant you King of My Heart is bad.
it's just never coheres for me. It came from a defensive place, obviously.
Sure.
The Kanye stuff. We don't have to get into it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it, and I don't want to listen to songs about it. That said, Delicate, sneakily good single.
It's not sneaky at all.
Snuck up as one of her big hits, I think.
Listen for the best. My reputation's never been this so. It was like me for me. Yeah, I want you. We can't make any promises now, can we be? But you can make me change.
Really looking back, we'll get to this, I think, in the narrative, but like, man, it wasn't looking good for Taylor for a while there.
That is accurate.
Like from Reputation through Lover, like up until Folklore was such a hard reset, and that's why I'll never be able to overlook it in the catalog, because I think in many ways it saved her career. That said, Delicate, great single. what I really want to save from Reputation, Don't Blame Me.
They say she's gone too far this time. Don't blame me, love made me crazy. If it doesn't, you ain't doing it right. Lord, save me, my drug is my baby. I'll be using for the rest of my life. Don't blame me, love made me crazy. If it doesn't, you ain't doing it right.
Don't Blame Me blows me away every time. I can't believe she pulls it off.
Yeah.
With the, the sort of gospel choir. Like, it's the yeah, it's, I mean, a little bit theatrical. I'll give you that. But just really like one of the only times I'd ever say the word soulful when listening to Taylor Swift. I will say,
like, there are so many, like, quote unquote wrong songs on this album. I'm just way more sympathetic to it than you are.
Look What You Made Me Do. In hindsight, where are you at?
Like, am I supposed to be disliking? Look What I Made You. Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm like,
oh, no. Slappers. All slaps.
Really?
Slaps.
You like Me?
No.
Okay, we'll get there.
No.
Taylor's big, bombastic lead singles from the second half of her career, like Look What You Made Me Do. Like, I just, they just give me the creeps in a little, like, because it's Shake It Off, starting with Shake It Off. Like, it's so...
Yeah, and obviously Me is a no-go.
It feels so much like about triangulating audiences. It just doesn't feel pure, and it's always like a winking version of her songwriting. Look What You Made Me Do, I don't hate as much as I used to. But I think I said this earlier. At Eras Tour, I went to the bathroom. I'm like, I'm just like, it's just not... That it's too much. And again, I just don't want to hear about Kim Kardashian on a Taylor Swift album ever again. But you'll have your say. What do you have at number 7?
Well, this is where you and I are back in alignment. This is 1989. 1989, as I think I said earlier, from a distance, I thought there's no way this isn't top 5 or even top 3. Maybe.
And I think everyone coming into this would think that. I think
it's such a formative album. It's such a one thing I was thinking a lot looking at all these year to year is where the real pivot points are. It's an obvious pivot point album. It clearly takes her from one stage of career to next. And I agree, Red on some level does that, but there's something... Red to me feels like the first tentative step of the pivot, and this feels like I have fully decided to pivot.
Yeah,
album.
She went halfway on Red.
Yeah, I mean, they were experiments almost. Yeah. Whereas this feels like a fully developed thought process. I like Style. I sort of like Blank Space. I like All You Had to Do Was Stay, as I said. Hate Out of the Woods, as we talked about. I think what I realized in retrospect about this album is what it did for her culturally was so loud that it actually obfuscated the fact that there are a number of songs on this that just don't hold up. But the things that are big, they put her in a position to become the Taylor that we now know. And I think that's why it occupies such a big space. And also Red, and we'll get to Red, but like Red, you have to think about how these albums landed and how people were thinking about Taylor Swift when these albums landed. When Red landed, people were like, she's a country singer. She's a pop-leaning country singer. She's a country singer. And Red comes along, and a couple things happen on Red, and you're like, what is she?
Right.
By this point, critical mass has sort of arrived. People who had dismissed Taylor out of hand 2 albums prior, or even on Red, were kind of like, maybe. We're like, oh, no, she's worthwhile. We'll take her seriously. That's not a problem you or I ever had. But the critical conversation did have to catch up to her. I think this is the album where a lot of like people who weren't on board for the first 3 albums, or 4, this is the 5th album, right? I think it's 5th. This is an album where the people who were not on board until Red were like, you know who's important? Taylor Swift is important. And all of us are like, well, yeah, like we knew that the whole time. But I think this is where critical approbation becomes the norm. And the sort of unthinking critical approbation that the Stan era has produced kind of like lines up with that. And I think that's why this album looks so big in the rear view, but if you listen to it with fresher ears, you feel where the fracture points are.
And I feel like this is something that repeats and that I see a lot in pop music, especially with the sort of zeitgeist beating stars, which is that the album, when it all comes together, when all of the acclaim and popularity come, is often one album too late. Like it was actually read, but the critical mass then arrived and said it was 1989.
I mean,
I think you see that with Adele
yes.
in particular.
Yes.
Like the biggest album is actually the one that came after the one that actually changed everything.
Well, that's unfortunate for those people who weren't figuring it out in real time. Hate to be them.
But yes, you and I both sort of ultimately 1989 skeptics.
I was surprised, but ultimately I feel like I can stand on solid ground and say that.
You know what a better album than 1989 is? Lover. Lover's at my number 6 spot.
Before you go into that, though, you said something earlier before we were recording about tiers of Taylor albums. How many tiers are we talking, and where are we in your tiers?
Okay. So I divided my list into basically 4 tiers.
Okay, I had 3.
Right.
And
I have
so
sub tiers, really.
Okay, but where are you? Are you still in the second lowest tier, or are you at the bottom of the second highest tier?
I'm in the middle of my second highest tier because I put the top tier quite high.
Oh.
So this is my number 6,
Okay.
and it's in the second tier. To me, Midnights and Torture Poets are a tier. Evermore in 1989 are a tier, which is like she really tried something, doesn't quite work, but there's a lot of highs. And then this 3-album tier for me, I have Reputation, I have Lover, and then I have my number 5. That's like these are core Taylor Swift albums. Like this is her.
Okay.
And to me, it's very similar to Reputation, but the experiments work for me more.
Yeah.
The Archer, I love. Paper Rings, another experiment
Incredible.
I really like.
A genuinely great, like, one-of-one Taylor Swift song. I would happily listen to 10 songs like that.
So have you ever heard of a band called Voxtrot? That's like...
I was there when Voxtrot's EP dropped.
False God, one of the great Taylor one-off experiments to me that she never quite sort of even tried to recapture. Cruel Summer, again, another a peak of her Jack Antonoff collaboration. It's really him, you know what I mean? Like you hear a lot of him in that one. She comes to the table and really meets him halfway as a producer and co-writer. I like some of the later stuff, Daylight and Afterglow. Like Lover, really strong to me. I think totally weighed down in the public consciousness by the duds, as discussed already, of Me and London Boy in particular.
I can't think.
And You Need to Calm Down video really, I think, put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths.
Is Me the worst lead single of a Taylor Swift album?
Oh, yeah.
Like
it might be her worst song ever.
Yeah, it's... first of all, talk about someone who showed up to the party and did what he was told. Brendan Urie did what he was told.
Remember the clip of him doing it in the documentary, the Netflix Taylor Swift documentary?
Yeah.
Unpleasant all around. Joel Little didn't get invited back.
No. An execrable single. Absolutely execrable. Yeah. Okay. Can I talk about my number 6?
Yep.
The 6th best Taylor Swift album.
We're getting to the good stuff.
We are. And this is an album, this is the one that I think the hit to miss ratio is low. It's one of the lower hit to miss ratios, but it's too important. And it had to get a kind of weighted bump. And that is Taylor Swift self-titled.
This is my number 5, so
Okay.
we'll just go in on this one.
So this is 2006. To my ear, 5 of these songs are incredible.
Name them.
6. Tim McGraw.
Yep.
Picture to Burn.
Yep.
Teardrops on My Guitar.
Yep.
Should Have Said No. Our Song.
Incredible songs. Some of the great songs about songs. She's got 2 on this one album, and it's her first album.
It's an unbelievable amount of lyrical acuity for any songwriter in any genre. The fact that it was done largely by someone who was 16 or 18 or 17, almost unfathomable. there are things I heard on this record in re-listening to it now that I don't think I was totally dialed into when it first came out. Number one, the songs that sound really young on this record, which are a lot of the other songs I didn't mention, really sound young.
Like they're demos from a high schooler,
yes,
literally.
You really feel her youth. And obviously, she was a teenager. It's like, it's fine. But there is a brittleness to a bunch. I didn't even type the names out. Like, there's a brittleness to a bunch of those other songs. Now, what makes them not brittle is there is a startling amount of uncredited or loosely credited male harmony singing. And what I think about, and it's on this record, and it's on the next record, and it's on the third album too.
It's basically a prerequisite for country radio, especially at the time in the mid 2000s.
And what I was thinking a lot, they're not duet partners like Brendan Urie was a duet partner. They're not duet partners like Gary Lightbody or Ed Sheeran. This is a father figure. This is paternal singing. It really reminded me. Do you ever remember this song, I Loved Her First by Heartland? Which was like a wedding song from like a kind of like one-off country band, like a Lone Star type country band. Reminds me of that. It reminds me of it's an older gentleman providing both authority and safe cover to a young female performer. And doing so in a way that bolsters her, makes her palatable to country radio, and also gives her true country bona fides. Now, a lot of these folks are not like, for years, I thought it was Vince Gill singing on these records. I don't think it's Vince Gill. It's like some other people. But I'd convinced myself it was Vince Gill for some reason. I'm just shocked at how much male harmonizing I hear on these records that I think of as crucial documents of like the young female experience.
And it's like she didn't need it. Yes, the voice was thin. Yes, she was a young teenager. But like the songs are so good and so precocious and so sort of just like preternaturally possessed that you just didn't need them. And you really see it as the product of a system. And you also see why, as soon as possible, she was like, there is no system except Taylor Swift.
Yes.
The last thing I'll say about Taylor Swift, self-titled debut album, I've said this before. Tell me if I'm wrong in the comments. Email us, popcast@onetimes.com. Maybe the greatest opening lyric of a discography of all time. I can't think of a better first lyric, first song, first album than "You Said the Way My Blue Eyes Shined, Put the Georgia Stars to Shame That Night. I said that's a lie." That's just like, like that's a short story. You know what I mean? And that's like character development. It's like you immediately know who Taylor Swift is.
True story. I still have the promo CD single of this on display in my home office. It like sits, I have it on my desk, and then I have like a cabinet type thing with like tchotchkes on it. It's on that cabinet. That's how special that song is. That's how important that record is. Unbelievable. Okay, so that was your number 5. Now we're going to go to my number 5. And this is going to shocked me. It shocked me so much I almost considered dropping it down 2 spots just because I didn't want to be a person who sat here on Popcast Deluxe at the New York Times and said the 5th best Taylor Swift album of all time is The Tortured Poets Department.
Wow. Yeah, I wasn't expecting this. Yeah.
How did I arrive at? Am I okay?
What are you going through?
A lot, candidly. What's going?
Have you been love bombed recently?
Can only hope so. Maddie Healy, call me. Here's what I realized about the Tortured Poets Department.
I can't believe this.
In the last, well, you knew it was coming.
Yeah. I couldn't even. I knew it was coming, and I still couldn't imagine that it would be top 5 for you.
I'm shocked.
Yeah,
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Okay, so why is the Tortured Poets Department? I'm gonna regret this immediately. I'm certain. Like the minute we're done recording, I'm gonna want to change this. This is one hell of a Lana Del Rey album. This is a hell of a Lana Del Rey album. The more I listen to this album,
another duet that doesn't work. By the way,
I know it's
Snow on the
unfortunate.
Beach.
It's unfortunate. It's fine. It's just not. Neither of them are doing the thing that the other one does. Yeah. They're not doing a new thing.
Yeah. It's a waste.
Yeah, it's a missed opportunity. in the same way, or in a complementary way, I should say, that the production decisions on Folklore and Evermore feel suffocating to Taylor. There's a universe in which these production choices are also suffocating. But you know
what? Which you've argued before.
I have. But you know what I've come to realize? Like, I've softened to her lyrical approach, and I think the kind of serrated edge to her lyrics on this album takes it out of suffocation mode and makes it there's a lot of frisson on this record. There's a lot of fascinating tension between her eyebrow arch, the tartness of her vocal delivery, the kind of like unctuousness of the production. It's a lot of interesting juxtapositions happening. And whereas on the other albums where the production really frustrates me, I just feel like it's Aaron Dessner like coming up from the swamp and being like, come down here with me and stay here. You don't, no joy or happiness for you.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. But this, to me, is Taylor saying, yeah, I understand you guys are doing something different, but now I'm going to do something different in reaction to what you're doing and elevate and go to an unexpected place. Obviously, you think about Lana a lot, Antonoff and Lana, Antonoff and what he's doing for Taylor on this record.
You want to apologize to Jack Antonoff?
First of all, I don't want to apologize to anybody. No apologies. I stand on what I said, and I stand on what I'm saying now.
Yeah, yeah.
Did I get? It's not like I gave it like a 3 out of 10.
No, we change our minds. Yeah, that's what we do.
And also, it's understanding, like, when you hear all the Taylor Swift decisions in aggregate, you begin to see kind of like harmonies between different decisions. And I think in my initial exposure to Tortured Poets Department, I thought of it structurally very similarly to Folklore and Evermore. And I still feel that way, but I just think that Taylor is so much more awake on these songs. And I think that's because of the subject matter. What we're getting is a kind of this submersed production, but with Reputation attitude on top of it.
It is a concept album, much like Reputation.
And so hearing Taylor tearing into like fork and knife, cutting him to pieces, chewing him and spitting him out over and over and over and over again. Oh, it's so liberating. And the more I listened to it, I was like, you know what? Like, salute. Tortured Poets Department, 5th best Taylor Swift album of all time. Who would have thunk it? It literally, not to be all Wallace Shawn, but inconceivable.
This is why we do it.
Inconceivable. No one was more shocked than me. When I did the raw numbers, I was like, this can't be right. I went back and double checked.
I know, there's a lot of good songs on here.
And then when I did the weighted average, I was like, surely it can't be better than 1989. In fact, it is. Surely it can't be better than Self-Titled. And in fact, it is.
Wow. I disagree, but I respect it. All right, we're zooming in. We're getting to the top here. And this is...
I really like that. You know how hard it was for me to say
that?
So
this next one is painful for me, which is my number 4, which... I wish was my number 1 or 2.
I think I know where you're going.
It's just not. I've made this argument before. I've laid the groundwork for this. This is the most uneven Taylor Swift album in terms of the gulf between the highs and the lows. This album has a near perfect first 8 songs and then almost nothing that I need after that. It's Red, and it's the number 4 Taylor Swift album.
Red is the number 4 Taylor Swift album. You are correct, sir.
Red starts like when the bass starts on State of Grace.
Oh, yeah.
State of Grace, one of the great underrated Taylor Swift songs. I was thinking when I was listening to it, and what comes not long after, which is Treacherous.
Yep.
I'm like, Taylor needs to do a B-sides tour. I know Taylor doesn't need, like, the bulletin board is planned, you know, like for however many decades from now. Like, it's on there, but like, you know, the Taylor Swift B-sides tour is going to really, really please me.
Yeah.
22, All Too Well. Like, I don't know. We don't have to run it down. We are never ever getting back together.
I Knew You Were Trouble.
The bass drop on I Knew You Were Trouble. The actual pivot point in the career. Like the
bass drop. It is, yes, a pivot point for Taylor. It's a pivot point for how dance music was going to revisit pop music. Like it is, I Knew You Were Trouble and We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together. Those two alone could put Red at number 1.
Yep.
Like, this is where the conversation about what makes a great album.
Yes.
This is what we have to think about. I agree. I don't know if all of the first 8 songs, maybe 6 of the first 8 songs are perfect. 6 and then 2 are good.
I almost do is to me the most questionable one, but again, I'll allow it just for that run. Sure. Side A, this is her best side A.
Yes. And 22, an 22 would be any other pop star's biggest number 1 hit.
Yep.
Sabrina Carpenter got a hold of 22. Be bigger than Espresso and Please, Please, Please. But the low points.
Then you get to Stay, and you enter side B.
I don't even mind Stay.
I feel like we've argued about this before. Then you got the last time, the Gary Lightbody duet.
Absolute.
Holy Ground, I like for side B of this.
Yeah.
Then you got Sad, Beautiful, Tragic, Slog. You got the Lucky One, Slog.
Yeah.
Everything Has Changed, Slog. Starlight, is this the song where she is writing from the perspective of Ethel Kennedy in 1945?
Yeah, I believe it is.
It's a little much for me.
Okay.
As somebody who likes folklore. I'm glad she got that out of her system before she got to Last Great American Dynasty. And then even Begin Again, like that's not... No,
that's not it.
It's not an album closer.
It's fine. Me. It's not... I don't dislike it, but it's not it.
But when side A is
so seismic.
Side B is just can't help but be a letdown.
Okay. The meta narrative on this album. So it's 2012. It's Taylor saying, I've just made 3 albums of really accessible, pop-leaning country, and I want to send a signal to people that I have bigger ambitions. But Taylor, in this particular moment, reminds me a lot of when Jay-Z was trying to signal a certain seriousness. And also, weirdly, when Eminem tries to signal seriousness, they think that ponderous rock music is like the most provocative, thoughtful thing you can do. And I've always thought that was a real disservice to like any other kind of music, rock or otherwise. But there's this sense that it's like, oh, it's a British singer-songwriter. It must be serious. Gary Lightbody or Ed Sheeran's on this record as well. I happen to like Ed Sheeran a lot, but like I don't mistake Ed Sheeran for like I'm becoming a serious artist.
Right.
Ed Sheeran is a pop star.
Sure.
But I think for certain artists at the pivot point of their career, they think that onerous, ponderous rock, especially delivered by a British person, is somehow the most serious thing that they can do. It's the thing that they can signal to let people know, no, I'm a real musician. And I will say the thing that I always took away from the first 3 Taylor Swift albums is that is a real musician.
Yeah.
You do not have to do the thing with the guy from Snow Patrol.
Right. Well, and especially because you already prove on the first half of the album that you're doing it with Max Martin, and
and also like
great.
Snow Patrol, the best Snow Patrol song is not as good as the worst song on the first 3 Taylor Swift albums. Well, maybe a couple of the songs on self-titled, but basically, you don't need to do this. And I don't know if it was like, how do we get on radio? How do we get on pop radio?
We are never ever getting back together.
No,
you had
I know.
22.
It's a strange choice. Yeah. I understand why.
Yeah.
But I think Taylor has had these moments of like, I want to be taken seriously, and that means Gary Lightbody, and it means Aaron Dessner, and it's like there are these moments. Justin Vernon. To me, out of all that, the Vernon stuff sort of works. Most of the other stuff doesn't. But it's like you don't need to do this. It's unnecessary. Taylor Swift, as serious artist, predated this and will post-date this. But yeah, Red, number 4, which means our top 3 are identical except for one record, and we know what they are. We know what our records are. All right.
But I think the order
we're about to find out
might keep each other on our toes.
All right. What's your number 3?
It's Fearless.
Okay.
Again, would have thought this was my number 1. Would have thought this was my number 2. Probably, this has some of my favorite Taylor Swift songs. This has some of the ones that I think I've made the case for Love Story. I think for everything that we already know it is, I think it's even better than that. And I think it's going to last longer than that. Forever and Always, Fearless, the title track.
You Belong With Me?
You Belong With Me. 15.
Unbelievable.
15 always gets me, and I always forget how early it comes. Yeah. It's the second song.
Yeah.
I'll just say it hits different when you have a daughter.
Oh,
like I just like this whole album.
God.
This is the first time I listened to it.
Father of a daughter.
First time I listened to it.
I can't believe you hit me with the father of a daughter.
I just
okay, Scott.
It got me. Wow. You know, The Best Day, another sort of like parent-child song.
Yeah.
What stuck out to me in re-listening to Fearless? I've heard this album a million times. It's really a pop punk album.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Ashley Simpson in here. We know Taylor loved emo, and she loved emo, especially right around this period in 2008.
To me, it's a little more Speak Now, but yes, it's Paramore.
I mean, yes, it's both.
Yeah.
Paramore.
Yeah.
Look, I like this album, but again, the second half, side B, is just a little more limp than I wanted it to be or than I remember. It's not front to back bangers. There's... You know, Tell Me Why. There's Breathe, another duet that I don't love, a Colby Calais one. Change, the last song, like The Way I Loved You. It's just like some of them just don't live up, and that's why it couldn't be at the very top for me. But Fearless, I mean, again, this is like
it's hard to argue with.
This is it's a great album.
It's if you could Criterion Collection an album, you should Criterion Collection Fearless. Call us for the box set. We'll happily contribute. All right, my number 3. Again, we're playing with the same ideas here. My number 3 is Speak Now. And it's Speak Now and Fearless were very, very close in my mind. They achieve similar things.
Yep.
To me, the lower lows are on Speak Now.
Okay.
And also Speak Now just gets dinged a point just for having Enchanted, which I never liked and continue to not like. And do you know how many streams Enchanted has on Spotify right now?
How many?
820 million streams. Like 5 times as many as anything else on this album, if I'm not mistaken.
Did it have some second?
I don't know.
Wind?
I couldn't figure it out. But that
I love
song,
Enchanted.
It's an abysmal song. I really hate it.
We're not doing this for most of the podcast, but we're so deep at this point. It's about the Owl City guy. Is that the rumor?
I feel like it is.
I feel like that's the long running rumor, and just like, I mean, best Fireflies is great, but
career peak.
This is the best. This is the best thing that ever happened to him. Enchanted works for me because it's super nutty. It's very Tortured Poets. When she's like, the bridge is literally, I just met you, please don't be in love with someone else.
Yes.
Like it's like it's really intense, but I feel the intensity.
This Speak Now also has a 1-2 song punch that is unlike anything else in Taylor's catalog, and frankly it's so good it could actually make it the best Taylor Swift album of all time, but I had to like balance it out, and that is Dear John, back to back with Mean. These are 2 songs in 2 radically different styles that deal with fundamentally the same thing, which is a bad boy. And if it's Dear John, it's a bad boy who dated you and then left you by the wayside. And if it's Mean, it's a bad boy who wrote a newsletter about how you couldn't perform and that you couldn't sing well, and you took it really to heart. I do remember at some point saying, perhaps, I don't know if I want to say I said it to Taylor directly, but I was like, you don't have to. I shouts Bob Leftheads, but you don't have to take what this man says seriously. You don't. It's just
Look,
ranting.
They're both still going, and they're both at the top of their game. So it is
Could
what
be
it
us
is.
soon. Could be us. So
this was the Drake and Kendrick Lamar of its day.
Yeah, it really was. Dear John
We've rhapsodized about this song together on podcasts.
I'm just gonna say it. When I was listening to it the other day, I wept. It's that good.
Is it her best song? It might be.
It's probably her best song. It's unfathomably wise. I mean, I know I've told this story on Popcast previously when I heard this album before it came out. And I remember exactly where I was when they played Dear John for me. And I remember that sense of like every cell in my body experiencing a sensation that it had not previously experienced. It was unreal. I was like, she's so smart. She's so talented.
She's so mean.
She's so vicious. What a startling record.
Yeah.
It's a great song. Here's the thing. If you don't know the backstory, it's a great song. If you know the backstory, top 10 all time. I mean, it's unbelievably good. That back to, and I don't even like love mean like that.
No, but when the little banjos come in.
When you come in, like it's kind of like I'm gonna make a blues song about the blues quote unquote musician that broke my heart, and then you think that I'm not like an authentic country singer or whatever? Here's my like Billy Strings record. Not that Billy Strings existed in 2010 or whatever, but wow.
The versatility, like the range, right? She had the range at this moment.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. I'm going to get my laptop to defend Folklore. Folklore is the second best Taylor Swift album.
Nom ya renge kyo. Nom ya renge kyo.
Okay, I've kept a note in my phone for a long time for group texts and conversations. I've ranked the Taylor Swift albums before. On any given day, my top 3 could rearrange. Folklore could be the best Taylor Swift album. Could be the third best Taylor Swift album. Right now, I have it at number 2. And I think it's because of what I alluded to earlier, which is the reset. Like, I'll say it. I had lost faith in Taylor Swift.
After Lover.
And again, it turns out...
And for you,
it turns out I like Lover and 1989 even. Yeah. Like, I was like, she is no longer the artist that I fell in love with creatively. It's just not there anymore. She's for the world now. It's fine. I don't begrudge her making pop songs. It was the pandemic. It was a legitimately dark time.
Incredibly dark time.
When this album hit, I
didn't need this album to bring me down even further.
When I press play on this album, like it starts with the one, which is like, it's like a little, it's sly, you know, it's like, it has a little groove, it has a beat. I was like, okay, like this is cute. Cardigan.
No.
Like, okay.
No, hard pass.
Last Great American Dynasty. Okay. Exile we talked about.
Yeah.
You hit track 5. From this run to me it's the run of Taylor Swift's career.
Yeah.
It's My Tears Ricochet, it's Mirror Ball, it's 7, August, This Is Me Trying. Yeah. And then to me, with the songs that really bring the album together, Illicit Affairs and Invisible String. I'm just like, I just didn't know that she could do this or that she wanted to or could be the type of artist who could do this.
For what it's worth, that is the string of songs that rescued this album from whatever purgatory I'd placed it in my head.
I mean, it's like this term gets overused, especially with artists who we've seen come. It's like, it's mature. And I knew she would get there eventually. We talked about the Joni Mitchell album. We've talked about the Joni Mitchell album. This is not a Joni Mitchell album. This is a Taylor Swift album. But the character studies, the lyrics, the hooks, she just brought it all together for me. And I can't believe it. It's like so late in a career, in a pop career. Most pop stars by their 9th, 10th, 11th albums, like they're out of ideas.
Yeah, of course.
They're flailing.
They're phoning it in.
Like she reinvented herself She righted the narrative. It was, and that sort of dovetails with my number one. It was a sort of like, you counted them out, you doubted her in some way. That could be reputation for you.
Yep.
But this is she's always best with a chip on her shoulder.
Yes.
She's always best when she feels like she's fighting against something.
Lyrical. The chip here is musical. It's not
lyrical.
Yeah.
But to me it just felt like she just honed in on something and she nailed it. And I just love these songs. I find them moving. I find them, and I think you've seen this in the reaction to it. These songs land with people who would have forever written off Taylor Swift, and I know that's the part that you're a little bit skeptical of that. Sure. But I do think that their sort of universality, like the way that they land with people who think like Taylor Swift makes music for kids, like that rings true to me.
Yes, although I think not to counter narrative during your moments of glory and celebration, but I do think part of what's interesting about Folklore and Evermore, it's not how old fans rediscovered her, but it's because they arrived during the pandemic. I think that there was a young generation of fans for whom this is the entry point.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I even saw this at Errors Tour a little bit, where there were people who were just unreasonably excited for that part of the set, and I found them to be probably largely under 21. And
it's funny because I'm talking about the flip side. I'm mostly talking about older people who could come to take her seriously with this music. And even the fact that it works on both of those poles, like to me that means it's something special.
Yeah, it's the more I listen to this album, and I probably, in prepping for this, I probably listened to this album more than I listened to any other album because I wanted to give it the fair shake. And to your point earlier, I kind of dug my heels in a little bit about it. And it's like at a certain point it became a bit.
Sure.
But also, I don't ever play this album for pleasure.
Right.
And even now, I still don't totally love it, but I admire it more than I did before. And I just, to the point we were talking about Tortured Poets is a more successful version of whatever Folklore was attempting, in my mind.
So which one do you have at number two?
I think it's striking that we both, in our top three, because I can sense where you're going, I know where you're going for number one, but how early these Taylor Swift albums are. Fearless is the second best Taylor Swift album to me. 15, Love Story, You Belong With Me. MAGA favorite John Rich has a songwriting credit on this.
Very bizarre. Very bizarre.
2008. It's a different era. This is like post Music Mafia. John Rich is a working songwriter in the town. Hillary Lindsay has a songwriting credit on this. It's a real first time maybe Taylor's reaching outside of the Liz Rose ecosystem. Fearless to me has the second highest percentage of excellent songs on any Taylor Swift album. We've already talked about most of the important things, but Fearless, especially in retrospect, I don't want to say it's an answer record to Self-Titled, but imagine what it was like for teenage Taylor to put out Tim McGraw, to put out other songs on the first album, and in some circles be like, that's interesting, but in dominant country circles be like, this teenage girl. Like, we take for granted a little bit it's not that women are dominating country music, but Nashville's had an incredibly hard time with female singers. We all remember Tomatogate. This predates all that. The idea that a young teenage female singer-songwriter could have hits on her debut album, I want to say was nigh unthinkable. There is something about Fearless that is a response not to the success of the first album, but to the implied limits of the first album. It's bigger, it's bolder, it's more powerful, it has bicep to it, like it really has bicep to it. And it doesn't lose its imagination, it doesn't lose its sense of wonder. It still feels like it's coming from the mind of a person who is experiencing things in real time. You don't get that kind of lightly textured, like negative, almost like lightly corroded Taylor. You don't get that till Red. You don't get that till what comes after. There's still that sense of wonder, but the scale and the power of this record as a second record from someone who's under 20 years old, it's... Who else Literally, who else? Who else could, any genre? Was Bob Dylan doing this?
Someone's going to tell us what Bob Dylan was doing.
Tell me what Bob Dylan was doing when he was 19. The Beatles. Were the Beatles doing this when they were 19? Probably. Whatever. If that's the only competition, if it's Bob Dylan, the Beatles, Taylor Swift, and Mobb Deep, if that's it, if those are the only people writing at this level of emotional intensity and power at age 19, it's great company to be in.
We're at our number ones.
Oh, man. I think we got to have a snack.
Before we get to the number ones.
So, okay, we're going to have a snack. We're going to be on hiatus for at least a few weeks. I regret to say this may be the last episode that is fully on YouTube. Meetings are being had. Conversations are being had. It's tough to say what's going to happen, but this may be the final full YouTube episode. Doesn't mean it's the final Jon and Joe episode. Doesn't mean it's the last time you'll see our beautiful faces, my haircut, Joe's lack of haircut. But this might be the last full episode on YouTube. I don't know. Send an email, maybe, if you want more. Send a note.
We've had a really good time doing this.
We're having a really good time doing
We've
this.
done it for more than a year.
We sure have.
Me and you in these chairs with ASAP Yams, Lil Yachty,
Pete Davidson.
Vagabond, Snail Mail, Pete Davidson, Ethel Cain, and Lil Peep. May he rest in peace.
R.I.P.
We've had a really great time.
We sure have.
It's been an experiment. There's more experiments to come. But one thing we did on Popcast Deluxe was
snacked.
We had a snack at the end of every episode.
So
we're going to review one more snack.
We're going to chomp on a snack while we talk about the best Taylor Swift album of all time. I know what yours is. Oh,
you know what mine is.
I do.
We've talked about both of them.
Yeah, but
we'll get
go ahead and get these crinkle bags.
All right, we got two special, rare
alt Cheetos. Unbelievable.
This is really, it's like I planned that. Like, these are really in my wheelhouse.
Can we talk about Cheetos?
Okay. You like Cheetos?
All right. First, if we're going to talk about Cheetos, we have to talk about cheese doodles.
You're gonna ride for cheese doodles?
No, I'm just saying, like, cheese doodles when I was growing up. This is an important snack of my childhood.
Okay.
Cheese doodles.
More than Cheetos.
I'm old.
Okay.
Yes.
You're saying they didn't have Cheetos?
I was saying cheese doodles. I'm pretty sure predated Cheetos.
Who knew?
Anyway, cheese doodles they're puffed, they're airy, they're uniform in texture and shape.
Mm-hmm.
I never found them totally satisfying as a flavor experience, but because it's more air than material, the crunch is really strong, and you can eat a lot of them.
You're talking about like a puff. A cheese doodle is like
cheese
a
doodle
like
puff.
a Cheetos puff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, but this is a much more compacted.
Yes.
I feel like the flavor dust on this is almost like acrid.
A standard Cheeto.
A standard Cheeto.
You've never had a bag of Flamin' Hot Cheetos, have you?
No.
Okay.
I mean, again, for this episode, for the potential final full episode, Joe very seriously considered sending me to a hospital with like the one chip challenge,
or even just a Flamin' Hot Cheeto,
or a Cool Ranch Dorito.
Right.
But instead, we're here. So tell me about these alt Cheetos.
Yeah. So we got Buffalo Cheetos. These are a rare experiment right now. Buffalo is probably my favorite flavor in the world.
It's unacceptable.
It's nuts.
Literally not. It's
wings are the greatest food. Buffalo is the greatest way to eat a wing. Cheetos in general, I'd say like Flamin' Hots are my top. Puffs are my second. Then regular Cheetos, not counting these. So we got Buffalo Cheetos.
These are American.
As far as I know.
They're American.
They're very American.
They're American.
They're straight from Buffalo. And then the other one we have, which is a very special treat.
Wait, is there is that actually? I mean, silly question. That's why they're called Buffalo wings.
Yeah.
I ordered a book on like a used book site, and it came from a bookstore in Buffalo. And then the guy wrote a note, and he said, "Been reading you for a long time.
Nice.
Stop by if you're ever in Buffalo."
Nice.
Shout out to that guy.
We'll go get wings with him.
Yeah.
All right. So the other ones we have are Canadian, and they're ketchup flavored Cheetos.
What flavored Cheetos?
Ketchup.
I thought you said ketchup.
Ketchup.
No, I know.
Ketchup?
But I thought you pronounced it in like a Canadian way.
Oh no, I don't know how to do that.
Okay.
I don't do accents.
Okay.
These were sent by friend of the pod, Caleb. I think I saw them on his Instagram story or something, and he sent them.
Blessed us.
So we have to eat them before we stop trying snacks on YouTube, at least for the summer.
At least for the summer.
Ketchup, another top flavor of mine, snack food. I think we've had a ketchup chip on here before.
We have, yes.
Love them. The idea that they're on Cheetos, like, I already know I'm going to love these.
I'm extremely
the pair
concerned.
of them, but I think they're going to upset you. Before I break in,
what is the best Taylor Swift? Whoa!
You just got to whip a buffalo. Wait till you smell the ketchup.
I wasn't ready for that. Okay, Joe, what is the best Taylor Swift album of all time?
It's Speak Now.
It certainly could be.
It's also the most underrated Taylor album of all time.
Oh, that's interesting.
Speak Now.
To me, Red is the most overrated. But
yes.
Yes.
We agree.
And
Even though
1989.
Red is really good.
Yeah.
It's Red in 1989. Yeah. Underrated. Speak Now. Okay. Speak Now, coming off of the back of Fearless. Fearless.
We should not have opened these before I had to listen to you talk. This is terrible.
Fearless is everything we've said it was, everything you said it was.
Yeah.
And then everyone was like, you know what? Taylor Swift is too good. Must be all those people writing her songs for her.
Yeah.
That's what they said about her.
It must be John Rich.
You know what she did? She kicked them all out of the room.
That's true.
She said, I'm going to write this album front to back by myself.
Yeah.
She has every songwriting credit on this album. As discussed, that means Dear John. That means Yes, it means Enchanted. That means Mine, which is a very underrated Taylor single to me.
Underrated, yep. Back to December.
Made a Rebel Out of a Careless Man's Careful Daughter. It's like Tim McGraw level, just sort of economy of language.
I was thinking about that line like over the week. Like it just, for some reason over the weekend, it just like stuck in my head. It's just, who thinks like that?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Long Live, Speak Now, the title track, Story of Us, great pop punk song.
Yeah.
Just a lot going on here. She proved it wasn't a fluke. She did high drama. She did sort of like camp storytelling on Speak Now, the title track. It's just the only song on here that doesn't work for me is Innocent. It's the only one.
I used to feel that way. I've come around to it, but I used to feel that way. Like for me, the only song that really doesn't work is Enchanted. But like, I have come around on it, but I know what you mean.
And again, it's like that's one where the public narrative to me weighs down the song and it just feels forced and infantilizing. I just don't like Innocent. But outside of that, Speak Now, it's the most cohesive. It's the most consistent. The highs are super high. We talked about Dear John. Very few lows. And she just did it. You know, she just coming off the back of something as big as Fearless and then making something tighter and arguably better like that.
And conceptually more sophisticated.
Yes.
That's the thing. This album comes third.
Yes.
And it is an increase in the conceptual sophistication from 1 to 2 to 3. And what follows this, the leaps on Red and 1989 are not leaps of conceptual sophistication, they're of scale
and sonic
ambition.
sophistication.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is the most, I would say, conceptually sophisticated Taylor Swift album until Reputation.
And I think it came from people questioning her pen. And then she was like, all right, let's go. I'm going to eat a ketchup Cheeto in celebration.
I'm not going to taste this because I don't want to have even a tiny bit of displeasure in my mouth when I say that the number one Taylor Swift album.
These are so good, by the way.
The number one Taylor Swift album of all time is Reputation. That's right. I didn't hear you say a damn thing when I said that. That's right. Reputation is the best Taylor Swift album of all time. And I want to be even extra honest about this.
Okay. It's your favorite album ever by any artist.
It's better than every Biggie record, every Jay record, every Outkast record, every Drake record, every Ye record.
It's not better than Ketchup Cheetos. Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's better than Ketchup Cheetos. Okay, here's the thing about Reputation. And more to the point, my relationship with Reputation. When this album came out, it was widely reviled. It was questioned, pushed back on. Me, I saw the light. I understood it. I understood how it fit in the narrative. I'm not saying you can come and pat me on the back. I don't need to pat myself on the back. You can come over here and pat me on the back. But I understood what she was trying to achieve. One of the things I like a lot about this album is Taylor is such a perfectionist that to hear her be slightly awkward but still kind of sticking the landing is, I thought, a sign of real growth. When I embarked upon this exercise, I obviously knew Reputation would be high, But I was just like, John, don't be the guy.
Did you try to bump it down a little bit? Just because you've been doing the bit for so long?
And I was like, you know what? Like, maybe I misremembered Speak Now or da-da-da. But when I was doing raw numbers, the highest number of songs I like, pure number, Reputation. The highest percentage, songs to total, that I like, Reputation. Most consecutive songs, like outside of that run that you were talking about.
On Folklore?
Yeah.
Yep.
And for me, outside the run on, what's the one? Red, sorry. So outside of those runs, I mean, just banger, 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 banger. Getaway Car. This is why we can't have nice things.
Should have been the first single. This is the number one misstep of Reputation, is that she was so wanted to settle scores and led with Look What You Made Me Do. To me, that threw off everything because you couldn't get the joke outside of the context.
But ready for it? I like Endgame. I mean, I know I can't think of a song that is more engineered for me to dislike. Look, Endgame is better than Kendrick and Taylor on Bad Blood.
Oh, yeah.
Like, by far.
Yeah, we don't talk about the Future verse in Taylor's career or in Future's career, but it exists.
I Did Something Bad. So salty, so sassy. So, like, this is the thing. We talked about style as like a kind of like standalone Taylor Swift.
These are 10 out of 10.
Okay. Will you let me have my moment here? Unbelievable.
Let me have my ketchup Cheetos.
Look What You Made Me Do. Delicate, as you talked about before. And what really blows my mind is that the end of this record is the quietest, calmest, most contemplative embrace of a love song of New Year's Day. It's absolutely like I went out for a night, a week, a month, a year, an era, and I took bullets. I was fighting people. Now, I just do want a sidebar. The aesthetics of this era are unbearable.
Like the costumes.
Yes. Yeah. I choose not to look. Like, I choose not to look.
Yeah.
But to hear, this is her saying, I went out and I fought battles. They were coming for me. They absolutely wanted me dead. And then I came home, and me and you, I put my love in your hands. I allowed myself to be soft and vulnerable, and there's no one else but us. And to do that at the end of an album that's absolutely knives out for 15 songs, just an incredible pivot. I remain startled by this album. I'm also shocked that it held up, because as committed to the folklore bit as I've been committed to the Reputation bit.
Yep.
I'm startled that now in 2024, looking back with hindsight, understanding even the frailties of this record, still feels like canon. And I think no one would have said that in 2017, but it's canon. I stand on it. It's the best Taylor Swift album. Now, I feel like as karmic punishment for me saying that, I have to try a Buffalo Cheeto.
Oh, I can't wait. Come on. I'll enjoy them. I think you might like the ketchup ones.
I mean, it really is like opening up a Heinz pack.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to run down my list while you try those. Then I'm going to try the Buffalo Cheetos. Just to recap. You're going to run yours back?
Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
you like those, right?
They are croquant AF.
Yeah. All right. Number 11, I got Midnights. Number 10, Torture Poets Department. Number 9, 1989. I'm sorry. Number 8, Evermore. Better than 1989. I can't believe it, but it is. Number 7, Reputation. Apologies to John Caramanica. Number 6 is Lover. Who would have thought? Dark Horse. Number 5, self-titled, Taylor Swift from 2006. Number 4, Red, 2012. Number 3, Fearless. Great album. Top 3 of all time for me, Taylor Swift albums. Number 2 is Folklore. And number 1, with a bullet for today, is Speak Now. All right. Oh my gosh, these Cheetos. I'm going to, when we're done to celebrate, I'm going to pour a big bowl of both of them. And it's going to be buffalo and ketchup Cheetos.
Can you trust this man's taste? A man who tells you that he's about to do that. Do you trust him or do you trust me?
These are
an aesthete.
A man who prefers cheese doodles to cheese puffs.
And a man who prefers Reputation to Folklore. Number 11 is Evermore. Number 10 is Midnights. Number 9 is Folklore. I stand on that. Number 8 is Lover. Number 7 is 1989. Number 6, Taylor Swift self-titled. Number 5, apologies to me, is the Tortured Poets Department. Number 4 is Red. Overrated, but the highs are so high. Number 3 is Speak Now. Number 2 is Fearless. And number 1, I did something bad.
You closed your laptop too hard?
Reputation. Joe.
Those are 10 out of 10. The ketchup Cheetos is a 10 out of 10 snack for me.
Okay.
The Buffalo Cheeto is a 9 out of 10 snack for me.
That is.
I love these Cheetos.
Okay. Buffalo, I'm going to say that's a 6.5. I didn't hate it as much as I expected to hate it. These, I'm going to go ahead and say these are an 8.
They're really good, right?
I'm really enjoying them. I'm scared to eat them because I'm going to be physically ill.
We're going to move to Canada or what? This is the snack quality we're working with?
How's Canadian YouTube? I'm very good, right? That's our show. I'm John.
I'm Joe.
Thank you to everybody who's been involved in youtube.com/Popcast. Popcast will continue. Popcast Deluxe will continue. We're going to take a few weeks off. We'll see you guys after Labor Day. Or maybe before, but definitely after. Every podcast ever is at nytimes.com/Popcast. All of these episodes with Joe and I on cameras, eating. That's at youtube.com/Popcast. Thank you to everybody who's been involved in the youtube.com/Popcast experiment. Thank you to Joe. Thank you to Sawyer Roquet. Thank you to Leslie Davis. Thank you to Jamie Heffetz. Thank you to Amanda Webster. Thank you to Pedro Rosado. Thank you to Karen Gans. Thank you to Nina Lossum. Thank you to Nell Galogli. Thank you to Pat Gunther. Anybody else?
Kimmy, great snacks.
Kimmy with the snacks. Everybody who helped us with art and things for the website.
Lindsay Flood.
Salute to y'all. We'll see you on the other side.